Hey YouTube, I'm back again with another video. Now today, it's gonna be a political one, and it's gonna be a brief overview about the different factions within the Conservative Party. Now, the Conservative Party is one of the two main political parties in the United Kingdom, along with the Labour Party. The Conservatives are one of the oldest parties. They've been around since the 17th century, when they were competing with the Whigs, when they were known as the Tories, and when they were competing with the Liberals. And then after Prime Minister Robert Peel repealed, I think it was the corn laws? Yeah, corn laws. The party split and became the modern day Conservative Party. Now, the Conservative parties don't just stand for one thing. There's multiple factions within the Conservative Party, like I said, and these are One Nation Conservatives, which is like your sort of like Benjamin Disraeli figures. They're more moderate, I'd say. And then there's the New Right, which is split into two different factions, so neoconservatives and neoliberals. Now, first I want to talk about One Nation Conservatives. Now, One Nation Conservatism is similar to traditional conservatism. It's a slight spin-off. So, sort of like a negative view of human nature. However, what One Nation Conservatives believe in is that there's two different nations, the rich and the poor. And if you keep on, like, doing policies that harm the poor or don't really benefit them, they're gonna contribute less to the nation, to the nation's politics, because there really isn't much to contribute for if you're getting ignored, and there's gonna be a split. There's gonna be a rich nation and a poor nation. And One Nation Conservatives think that there needs to be policies that help the poor. For example, giving out the vote to working class men, which is what Benjamin Disraeli did. And as a result, you get rid of that sort of poor people or the working class people having this negative view, and now since they have the vote, they have something to contribute for, and therefore, alongside with the rich, form One Nation. Now, this is more so moderate conservatism, and they don't really seek to change anything. So, for example, the welfare state. When Clement Attlee was elected Prime Minister in 1945, he brought in the welfare state, the NHS, and when Winston Churchill came back in the 50s, and then through Harold Macmillan and Anthony Eden, they never sought to change the welfare state. No privatization and all that stuff. And that's one of the key views of One Nation Conservatism. Not really to change anything, once it's there, just stick it there. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, essentially. So the NHS, it's in a bit of a tatters now, but back then it wasn't. So as a result, it didn't really need fixing. So One Nation Conservatives were like, alright, let's just leave it as it is. It doesn't require fixing. So One Nation Conservatives essentially believe in you need to have policies that benefit the working class and the poor, so that way there's no rich nation and poor nation, it's all one nation, hence the name One Nation Conservatism, and they don't really seek to change anything, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Again, this is a very brief overview. I'm not going into too much detail. That may come in later videos where I go into full depth analysis, but now I'm just sticking to the basics, just scraping the surface. Now, I said that there's two different factions, One Nation Conservatism. We just covered that. What about the New Right? Now, the New Right more so emerged in the late 1970s and was dominant in the 80s and into the early 90s and in 2019 as well. So, what the new right is a split between neoliberals and neoconservatives. Now, neoliberals are basically just classical liberals. You know, they believe in negative freedom. They believe like, you know, less restrictions. They believe like in a smaller night watchman state. However, they reject like Keynesianism economics. So that's where the distinction comes in. But many neoliberals would consider themselves classical liberals. So, yeah. Now neoliberal economics is like, you know, not much state intervention. So something like laissez-faire capitalism is something they believe in, and that's kind of the system we live under today. Like, you know, privatization, free trade, and all that stuff. And then there's neoconservatives. Now, neoconservatives want to bring back like the good old days, essentially. Like, for example, the welfare state. A neoconservative would be like, "Oh no, the taxes are way too high for that. Let's get rid of it and go back to how it was like pre-1945." Essentially, is what a neoconservative would believe. A neoliberal would believe in like less like government intervention, you know, no hate speech laws, which is kind of what we see in the modern day Conservative Party now. You know, rejected like all of like Labour's hate speech laws that get passed, or like all this hate speech stuff. Essentially that's what it is now. Maggie Thatcher is a very important figure in the new right. Now, she became prime minister in 1979, and she really sought to, you know, privatize everything, to have her view of like a neoliberal economy. Now, Thatcher was very neoliberal on economic issues, very neoconservative on social issues. So she privatized like different industries. She shut down like the mining industry, which almost caused a trade war within the United Kingdom, a trade civil war, like the miners' strike and all that. With like Arthur Scargill, but Thatcher won in the end. Thatcher, you know, she ruled with an iron fist, essentially. So basically, what she did was she brought about neoconservative social ideas, like, you know, like privatizing like all these like different industries, you know, neoliberal economics, and that's essentially what the new right is: neoliberal economics mixed with neoconservative social ideas. And the reason why the new right came about is because it was like this reaction to like how, you know, in the 1970s there was like inflation, recession, labor wasn't really working, and one nation conservatism wasn't really working, so there had to be something different. And as a result, that's how like the new right came into power. That's how Maggie Thatcher came into power, with all of her privatization. Now, a one nation conservative would actually oppose what Maggie Thatcher did, and this is because, like I said, they don't seek to change what's broke. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They thought the welfare state, or like all these like mining industries wasn't broke, so no fixing it. Maggie Thatcher was like, no, we need neoliberal economics, so let's privatize all of this for laissez-faire capitalism. And well, Thatcher definitely succeeded in that, although Starmer did nationalize railways, so there's that. Yeah, so nowadays, Conservative Party, are they more One Nation or are they more New Right? Now, Kelly Badenoch herself has said that she is right. She's on the right of the party. So for that, we can definitely say it's New Right. Now, let's take a look at the social issues. Now, they obviously want a lot less immigration, which would definitely be a neoconservative social issue. Because, you know, pre-1945 and all that, there was barely any immigrants, and a neoconservative would like less immigration. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, so that's definitely one issue where they're neoconservative. They obviously do try to seek privatization, So they definitely are neoliberal on economics. Obviously Brexit, that's a very neoconservative idea. That's also a kind of neoliberal idea because of free trade. So a new right would support Brexit, and the One Nation Conservative wouldn't, like David Cameron and Boris Johnson.
I like to paint, or I make things. I like to.
What do you make?
I have a thing where I make models of. When I was in London, well, Mayor of London, we built a beautiful. I make buses.
You make models of buses.
I make models of buses.
So they're going to be in Downing Street.
So what I do? No, what I don't make models of buses. But what I make is, I get old, I don't know, wooden crates.
Yeah.
Right. And then I paint them. And they have two. Suppose it's a wine. It's a box that's been used to contain two wine bottles, right?
Right.
And it will have a dividing thing.
Yeah.
And I turn it into a bus, and I put passengers. You really want to know this?
You're making buses. You're making cardboard buses. Okay, that's what you do to enjoy yourself.
I paint the passengers enjoying themselves.
Okay, great.
On the wonderful bus.
Great.
Boris Johnson, on the new right, Brexit, and David Cameron, One Nation, supporting Remain. So that's just how they're different, essentially. Like I said, didn't go into too much detail, because right now I'm just covering the basic differences. Maybe in future videos I might go into more detail, but so far I'm just sticking it, keeping it basic so far. Next video should be either tomorrow or next week, which will be obviously a Star Wars video.
We'll take the long way.
And yeah, but this was a political one about the differences between One Nation and the New Right. I hope you understand. And if any improvements can be made on my videos about how I explain things, please let me know. Thank you, and have a great day.